Welcome to the Courageous Entrepreneur Show. This is the show that shares information and inspiration to help you break free from self-doubt, limiting beliefs and disempowering patterns, and break through to create the thriving, successful business you dream of and deserve. I'm your host, Winnie Anderson. The show features interviews with entrepreneurs who've overcome amazing challenges to create success on their terms and experts who share insight and practical information to help you move forward with courage, confidence, and clarity. So you, the introverted, mission-driven entrepreneur, consistently reaches your biggest goals. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll share the show with others. Be sure to visit winnieanderson.com/launchlab, all one word, to get the show notes and worksheet for this episode. If you feel as though you've worked hard to get your coaching, consulting, or other expertise-centered business off the ground, but you found yourself nowhere near the success level you've dreamed of, or if you're starting to feel that entrepreneurial itch and you dream of going out on your own and making a big impact and big income, but you're wondering if you've got what it takes to create the success that you dream of and deserve, then you'll be glad you tuned into this episode. Deb Bounanger is a success mentor for women leaders who want the courage and confidence to make bold moves in their life and career. She is also founder of the Launch Lab for Women Entrepreneurs, a 12-week virtual accelerator for women making the leap from corporate leader to successful entrepreneur. Deb spent the majority of her corporate career with Gartner Incorporated, where she was responsible for developing the concepts of several of the company's key products. In her last position, she launched and grew a new service offering to, get this, $32 million in just 2 years. She's passionate about translating the exact principles that work in the corporate world to entrepreneurs who are launching their businesses. Deb is based in Sag Harbor, New York, where she shares her love of the ocean with her life partner and her son, who is a junior at the University of Michigan. Go Blue. Remember, my guests and I aren't giving you specific business advice. This information we're sharing is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you need help, be sure to seek out a trained professional, whether it's a professional financial advisor, tax professional, or healthcare provider. So listen in as Deb and I discuss what drives us to start our businesses and how we end up with the opposite of what we wanted. The amount of money she thinks you should reasonably expect to invest in launching and growing your business, the common mistakes corporate escapees make with the money they invest and where you should be investing it, why your reputation isn't enough to launch your business, and the 2 things you need to focus on. She also shares the 2 biggest mistakes she sees people make. I'll bet you've made or are making at least one of them. She also shares what you need to stop hiding behind and spending money on, and the $10K investment she herself made early on that's still paying dividends, as well as why you need a coach and a community to make the advances you dream of. As always, listen all the way to the end, where I'll share your cocktail exercise and action step for this episode. Deb, I'm so excited to have you here. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day.
Thank you so much, Winnie. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. So let's dive in. We've got lots of similarities, so we'll be amening each other probably through the entire conversation. You know, folks, as you well know, start their businesses for a variety of reasons, and especially women, right? And I think that it's only after that we've launched, we go, oh crap, this is not the way it's supposed to go, right? This is not, I don't see rainbows and unicorns and all of that. And one of the things that I now laugh about is this issue that we start this business, I don't know what ails us. We start this business thinking, I want more control and I want more balance in my life, right?
Right.
What in the world? So I don't know about you, but I work for the meanest boss in the world. I put in way more hours than if it's even possible, than I did when I worked. And there's an old bad joke about what's the definition of an entrepreneur? Somebody who'll work 80 hours for themselves because they won't work 40 for somebody else. So let's talk a little bit about this concept that we start out with, I want more balance.
Right. So I want more balance in my life. I want more control. I want to have an impact. And I'm sure everyone who's listening to this is very smart, very talented, very accomplished at what they do. But what you don't realize is that as soon as you make that leap, you're not only your service provider, you are business development, your marketing, your HR, your finance, and you're wearing a lot of different hats. And even though you're super accomplished in what you do, whatever your content area of expertise is, no one is prepared for the amount of work it takes to actually get your business off the ground.
Right. Yeah. And I don't care how positive minded you are. I don't care how abundance minded you are. There's a certain, you can't sit around and go, oh, money in big bags, money in big bags. That's not the way this works, right? The universe requires you to step forward and take some kind of action. And I know, you said it well. These are smart people who are listening and watching this. And I'm going to bet that they, like me, I was a big fish in a small pond, geographically, as well as in my industry. And I hate to admit this, I'm smart. I have multiple degrees. I really thought that my reputation to a degree was going to lead to business.
Right.
It was well known and I had a great reputation but it didn't. Not,
so this is
at least not enough to feed me on a regular basis.
That's right. And so this is the number one myth. And this is what I hear all the time with women who've just made the leap. They're just starting out and they'll say, I got my LLC. I have a website. I have a lead magnet. And then what they don't realize, it's like crickets. Where is everybody? Right. And there are some critical habits, and some of them you already have and you can take with you, like goal setting, time management, really batching your tasks, blocking your time, having clear intentions and priorities every single day. Those skills carry with you and they're super important. And you need help, right? No one does this alone. You need to either get a coach or take a course or enroll in some program that will teach you how to launch a business. So I was really fortunate, right? So I'd been launching businesses as an intrapreneur inside of my company for 20 years. Great. So I knew how to launch stuff. And that was a huge advantage.
Yeah. And those are really great points. And I think that sometimes we get so, I don't know what, burned out, done with it, over the whole corporate thing, and it's like one extreme or another. So I've made these mistakes. I have worked with clients who have made these mistakes, and I continue to see them every day. That there's just this, I'm going to throw out everything that has to do with my past existence. I am sick of being told what to do. I am sick of not having control over my schedule. I'm not doing it. I once spent a half day with a client and I asked her, I forget what it was, but it was a question about planning. And I asked her about managing her incredibly crazy busy calendar and managing her plans and her goals. She said, it's up here. I don't write anything down. Now, there was, that magic moment when my brain was fully functioning too. But, you could be snatched by aliens. And generally, it helps to write stuff down. So is that your experience as well, that you've got there are people who just throw out everything and go, I'm not doing it?
Yeah, so there's a revenue goal, right? So I'm going to replace my corporate salary working for myself, right? So amen to anyone who is listening to this now and has said that to themselves, right? And the issue is you have to reverse engineer how you're going to get there. Right. So that's where the annual goal, the quarterly goals, understanding what you're offering, how you're pricing it, how you're packaging it, what your sales goals are, and then listing all the activities that back up into that. You have to be seen and heard. How are people going to know about you? Are you a content producer? Are you writing? Are you speaking? Are you doing webinars? And then the priority setting, I guess I'm an analytical thinker, so I always start with the end in mind, and then reverse engineer everything else that needs to happen in order to hit whatever that number is, and typically it's a fairly hefty 6-figure number.
There absolutely is even though you might say money doesn't motivate me and money's not what I'm doing this for, and the electric company, though, expects you to be motivated to pay their bill. So they don't want to hear about wishing and hoping and that you want to bring some big change in the world. They want you to pay them.
Right. And more money is more impact, right? So it's so funny. And you can go to a yoga class in the middle of the afternoon, or go work out at the gym, or run an errand, get your groceries. For those of you who are working moms, you have the flexibility to pick your kids up at school. I know for me, I was able to be class parent for 11th and 12th grade when things get really sticky in high school. And that was such a very fulfilling experience for me. But the rest of the time, I'm really, people say to me, Deb, you are so disciplined. You are so driven. And it's because more money, more impact, right? So, or the reverse is no money, no mission, right? So you only get to fulfill your dream when you're bringing the money. And the interesting thing about women is when women are successful and they make money, 90% of them just give back to other women. And that's the sea change, I think, that we're seeing from women who are leaving the corporate workforce, and also younger women who are jumping right into entrepreneurship, is that the end goal is to really make an impact and give back. And it's women who are helping women that are going to help this whole ship rise.
Yeah. And, I almost admire those young women who have the guts to go for it early on in their lives, because they have less conditioning than those of us who have spent decades in the corporate or organizational systems, because they've only been conditioned up until this point in their lives. Not that that isn't, tremendous, the power of conditioning that we experience from our family, society, educational systems, etc. But there's, I think, a really interesting conditioning process that helps, or that happens throughout our corporate existence. And one of the big ones that I've noticed that after I've sat here and stroked my chin a while is, again, it's that big fish in a small pond, especially for those of us who were directors, managers, department heads. You were automatically visible. You did not have to work at it.
Right.
There was either you or maybe you and a couple of other people, but you were automatically the magnet for people who had a problem that you could solve. And, we had this saying in the casino hotel that I worked at, that we would spread positive gossip about people. So we all know gossip's negative, but so our version of positive gossip was when you would say great things about somebody. So, you wanted, of course, to have a great reputation in your organization, and that would bring people to you. Suddenly, and it pains me to see this, I wrestled with it myself. Suddenly you're out on your own, and it's truly like building your reputation all over again.
Yeah, it is. And, it's important to pay attention to that. It's important to pay attention to reputation building. And again, it's being seen and heard.
Right.
And a lot of the women who are making the leap from leadership to entrepreneurship are kind of introverted in nature. Not everyone is, out there on Insta, taking a photo of everybody they've rubbed shoulders with and creating that whole brand identity. And I think those who are introverted struggle even more because this is such a big social media world. And unless you're doing Facebook Lives, or now LinkedIn has lives, LinkedIn Lives, and getting on conference agendas, how will people ever discover you? In the old days, 7 years ago, you could take out Facebook ads and build an entire following of people who discovered you on Facebook. And now that market is so crowded and has gotten so expensive and so competitive that that's an avenue that's not available to everyone anymore. So I think that's probably, aside from figuring out what you're going to offer, who's going to buy it, who's the ideal client, how do you package it, how do you price it, getting out there and being seen and heard. And by the way, if you haven't done all those other things, like who's my ideal client, what am I offering, how am I packaging it, how am I pricing it, you have no business marketing it, because all of that effort will just fall on deaf ears. And then there's a negative consequence of you lose confidence, you lose courage, and then you feel like a failure. So, me, I think we talked about this before. My big bailiwick is that you do your research, you do some market research up front. You have to have a problem that you solve that people are willing to pay for in order to have a business. And so that, I think, is the one thing that people skip over the most, is not understanding who's my audience, what am I selling? And then the second mistake they make is, and I had a conversation with a woman just last week who is so super intelligent, making such a big impact with the people she coaches, and she was charging $500 for a course, for an entire course. And the thing with pricing is it just kicks up all your stuff, right? So I have to assign a value to my expertise. Now, in the corporate world, you were assigning a value to the corporation, to that brand, and the value that that brand provided. And now you're the brand. Yeah. So I think psychologically, too, just stepping into all of that is a big challenge for some, and many, actually.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. There are so many layers to that. First is the whole assigning value, right? So you come face to face with your own crap. And I don't know that anything brings out crap the way money and your money story. You don't even know you have a money story. And suddenly you've got money issues and, oh my gosh, I've got a money story. And then there's the whole pricing thing and the value, and then well, I'm not worthy, because suddenly you forget all of your amazing achievements in corporate life. Well, they don't, and this is what I've been told, they don't mean anything. Yes, they do. I have a friend who has a great way of describing it. He calls it your corporate pedigree. And I think I love that, because yes, you are worth what you're going to charge because you did that. That's what gives you that right to charge X money and the impact. But so what do you recommend with people who have these money issues around pricing and charging and that stuff?
Yeah, well, it's all about value, right? And value, the two-sided equation. Number one is how I value myself and how much I deserve. So everyone has a story, like you called it a money story, and it actually can transcend other areas of your life as well. But what's the story about how good I am? Because it all comes down to, am I good enough?
Yeah.
So it's deeply psychological. So that's why, when I work with people, we always deal with the psychological piece of it, the mindset piece. How do you master your inner game? Right. Because you can't just slap an affirmation on that, just like you were saying in the beginning. That just doesn't work. You have to rewrite that story. And I think you're right. I think some of the younger people don't have that baggage, but I think those of us who grew up in the corporate world took the place of mommy and daddy. It was the mothership.
Yeah.
right? And we were safe. We weren't taking risks. And as soon as you jump off that ship, you jump into risky waters. And, that is both a psychological journey as well as an analytical journey and a very practical journey of how am I going to map this out and make this work. And everyone's got different goals. Some might want to, launch that $1 million business. Others want to just keep themselves engaged and do something that interests them for the next 10 years because they're not ready to retire.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that one important point that you just mentioned is this whole idea of mommy and daddy. You hate to admit it, but corporate life is incredibly familial. I don't care whether you work for a man or a woman, there's that parent figure of the manager. The siblings are the coworkers that you work with. And there's this enormous dynamic. I worked in human resources for a long time. And one of the things that secretly used to make me crazy was people who talked about how, but I thought we were family. No, we're not family. I don't know about you. I came from a dysfunctional family. And most people I think do to a degree. I came from a family that there's a subtext. You don't talk about it. We don't talk about this problem. That's Uncle Joe, and we just let him do whatever he wants because he's wacky, and we're just not going to confront him over it, right? I mean, that's what family life was to me, and corporate life. I think some of us are searching for what we didn't have and don't have. Yes, it's wonderful to work with nice people, and it's great that work is enjoyable because you spend so much time there. But I really think it is a mistake to look for a family in the workplace.
I agree. And I think you always have to prepare for the eventuality that is going to go away. And whether you're ready for it or not, whether you come to it yourself through burnout or you get aged out. Or, I have a bunch of clients who, we've just done away with your function. Here's your severance, see you later.
Right.
Or someone new gets promoted into the most senior role. And for some reason, you're not their cup of tea. So you can never predict how long that will last. They aren't your family because you're not married to them forever. And having a plan B, whether that's a plan B of what I would do if I lost this job and how would I look for another, and what would I do if I were to create something on my own. Because, and it doesn't matter whether you're looking for another job or you're starting your own business. The mistake we make is we feel like we have to fit into a box that's already created, that's already defined. And instead of creating your own box, going out there and see where is there a problem to solve and where do I have skills to apply to solve that problem? And by the way, could I make money doing it? Those are all good questions to ask before you even take the leap. There's something else that I was just thinking of too. Speaking of inside the box or outside the box, but I lost it. It'll come back.
That's okay. Yeah. Whenever it comes back, just shout out. Let's talk about this issue that you mentioned that, oh my gosh, I so agree with you on, is this issue that you have to identify a problem that you solve and people have to be willing to pay to have it fixed. When I know this happened to me, I know many people that I know that it's happened to them where you start telling people, I'm thinking about going out on my own. Here's what I'm thinking about doing. People are like, yeah, that's a great idea. Absolutely. And then when you ask them for money, right, when it comes time when, okay, I'm selling this, now, it's like you right number or something. So there is a difference, I think, between the reality of people now have to pay me for this and identifying it in the language of this is a problem that I can help you solve. And this is why you must solve this problem.
And how I can do it differently than everybody else. So that's the other thing. So when people leave the corporate workforce, it's frequently as a coach, consultant, or trainer.
Right.
And maybe you wrote a book and you're looking to get speaking gigs. And as I say to my clients and prospects, how are you going to differentiate yourself from every other coach, consultant, and trainer out there? Because the coaching industry is exploding. It's like a $1.2 billion industry right now. No signs of slowing down. There are leadership coaches, sales coaches, life coaches, health coaches, and everyone is jumping on this coaching train, which is great because people need a lot of support, and it's great that people are asking for support. Companies need support. It's a lot of things that corporations are dealing with, but how you differentiate yourself is super important. So I have a little story, if that's okay.
Yeah.
My client, Sharon, she and I had worked together a few years ago as I was life coaching her through some personal challenges. And then she was a CPA, a tax accountant, and she said, I've just left my job and I'm going to start my own business. I said, great, what are you going to do? She says, I'm going to be a tax accountant for small businesses. And I was in New York City that day walking down the street, and I saw a truck across from the library that said free tax advice. And I took a picture and sent it to her, and I said, I think you need a differentiated strategy. And what she discovered, the problem that she solved, was that there was this growing interest in trading cryptocurrency, and no one understood how to report that. The government was still trying to get their hands around how to report on cryptocurrency trades. She became a de facto expert, launched a course, became a private consultant, a speaker, and now she has a regular column in Bloomberg Tax, and she is like the de facto cryptocurrency taxation expert in the country. Yeah. So creating a differentiating strategy so that you can stand out from all the other voices that are out there saying, oh, I can help you have more effective managers, or, have more confidence.
Yeah, and I think that what that also speaks to is that I refer to it as a slice of a slice. It's that you've got to have a narrow, focused focus in order to really differentiate yourself. And that sounds counterintuitive, like I want more clients, not fewer. But the point is, if you need brain surgery, who are you going to go see?
A brain surgeon.
Brain surgeon. I need a brain surgeon. And you don't think, who's average? Because I don't want to spend a lot of money. So who's really an average Now you want the best brain surgeon possible. Everybody wants to work with somebody who's an expert. They might start out thinking, if they're into personal development, okay, Tony Robbins, he's at the top of the heap. I can't get Tony Robbins. So who else is out here who's really outstanding and who can truly solve my exact problem? I'll give you a great example. So I moved about, 6 years ago. And obviously, when you move and you move far enough away, you now need all new service providers, right?
Right.
So, of course, I needed a new gynecologist. And I was married emotionally to my gynecologist. He was my surgeon. He saw me through just some really terrible points in my health. And what the heck am I going to do? I got to have somebody. So he gave me some tips on here's what you look for. And I found a person who specializes in midlife women. Sorry if you're in the baby making stage. Don't care. So I want somebody who specializes in my problem and in the problems I'm going to have as I age. And she's it. She's a total unicorn. And that's what I think we need to think of ourselves as. What's this little space I occupy that I can be the magnet?
Yes, and narrower is better. And solving a specific problem, that no one else is solving, getting really specific. You can't get too narrow. So, it is a dance when you're doing your research, how narrow do I need to get?
Right.
Because too narrow is the same thing as too wide. The other thing, and what I was going to say before, is for those who hide behind additional credentials. So sometimes this needing to differentiate is, I need another certification, I need another degree. And I just want to make it super clear for all your listeners is that's I'm not good enough. The truth is, you know enough, you're good enough. There are people out there who need you. The longer you keep chasing credentials, it's a false sense of accomplishment.
It is. It is. I used to be a recruiter, and other than professions that truly require that, in my opinion, that was a lazy screening tool. A lazy screening tool. How many doctors, for that matter, do we know who suck? Right? I know a few.
Mm-hmm.
How many teachers do we know who are licensed professionals who are awful? Right? There are licensed people who are poor in their profession, but they got the license. So yeah, that's just, you think it helps the buyer. It helps a lazy buyer. And so to a degree, there's that benefit. However, you already have tremendous credentials that's what that person is interested in. It all, in my opinion, it really does get back to this. What problem do you solve? Does that person have the painful, burning, itchy, and scratching that you solve? And if you don't solve that, it doesn't mean you need to learn whatever it is they've got.
Right. It's actually a self-sabotage pattern.
Yeah. I know, because I used to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, being aware of your patterns, there's two layers here, right? So first of all, you need to be aware of your mental, psychological patterns, how you're likely to trip yourself up, so that when that stuff happens, you can course correct. And secondly, you need to have a plan. You need to have a path for this is a great idea. How do I test it? And when I test it, then I'll understand the value proposition. I always say to my clients, when you can speak what someone else is thinking, you've got it made.
Right. Yeah. In copywriting, we call it entering the conversation the buyer is having in their head. And that again is, I think, a great selling point for you have to focus, because you can't learn God bless the people who speak multiple languages, right? That's how many years did it take them? And what kind of natural affinity do they have for learning languages? That's not you. So it gives you permission to focus, to become an expert in one language. And then you can use examples that people go, you really get me. I want to work with somebody who gets me.
Exactly. I'll get, have you been reading my diary, or are you inside my head?
Right.
So when you do that, and just, for people who are struggling, I just want to give you permission to take a deep breath. It's not you. Maybe you just didn't get the instruction. You didn't get the manual. Right. And you didn't know the right steps to go through. And the most important thing is that you have the funds to actually do the research, spend a couple of months having conversations with people, asking the right questions, analyzing the patterns, having the value discussion. How big a problem is this for you? Is this a $50 problem, or is this a $5 problem?
Right.
And, where is there evidence that people are investing in solutions like this, and then creating a concept that you can go out there and test and go through a testing phase. You can get to it the other way, but most people burn out. Your confidence takes a huge hit, and you run out of money. And you don't want to burn yourself out and have to go back and get a job a year, 2, 3 years from now, because you just didn't take those 3 months up front to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that speaks to patience, knowing that forming the questions, finding the questions that you're going to ask these folks, and then being comfortable with that testing process, which is probably the one thing, I used to be a brand strategist and copywriter, one thing that universally clients hated. Nobody wanted to hear, you really need to test this, that then we'll adjust it, but you need to test this. So are there any strategies that you like to see folks who are in these expertise-based professions, coaches, consultants, author, speakers, any testing type or style that you can think of that you really like to see people use?
Yeah, what I like to have people do is really jump into conversations. And, the introverts sometimes have trouble with this. I don't like talking to strangers. Well, if you don't like talking to strangers, how are you going to sell anything? Right?
Right. Yeah.
So you have to get comfortable talking to strangers, having that conversation, asking the right questions. What have you already tried? What's worked? What hasn't? What do you wish you had? And being able to craft concepts around that is just super, super important. And, even if it takes, and it takes time, right? So it takes time. It takes a couple of weeks. It takes having some analytical skills applied to the problem that you solve as opposed to just jumping right in, which sounds fun. I call it sharpening your pencils, right? So, I've got a copywriter, I've got a photographer, and I've got a website, and I've got my LLC, and I have my consultant, and I've got my logo. Well, that's great, but you don't have a business yet.
Right.
You can have a business and not have any of that locked up. And in fact, you shouldn't do all of that until you've figured out what problem you solve. Because as you know, right, as a copywriter, your words need to reflect and reflect your value proposition and attract your ideal clients. So,
and if you're going to work with a designer, a graphic designer who's going to do your logo, or you're going to work with a web designer who's going to create a website, and they don't ask you what problem do you solve, you better run so stinking fast away from them, because I don't care if they're charging you $5 or $5,000. It's too much, because whatever they create for you is not going to do the job. You are just wasting money. Start a blog on Medium. Do something. But it's the getting the message out that is so important as you figure that, because you're figuring that out too, right? That's the whole point of what you're saying, is helping you figure out the message. And while these things make you feel like this is fun, getting business cards and designs and all that stuff, if, as you said, if it doesn't reflect what you're doing and resonate with your audience, you are wasting time and money.
It's false progress.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And, I have never seen anyone succeed without help. So when I made the leap, and this was 7 years ago, the first thing I did was contact someone I had worked with the interactive agency business several years before, and she had already made the leap, and I knew she understood all the technology, because that's the other piece we haven't talked about, is the whole, you have to be IT too, the whole technical infrastructure that you really need to support your business processes so that you can be effective and get leverage in your business.
Yeah.
You cannot trade time for dollars forever. You need some leverage. You need lead systems who are bringing people in, filtering them for who you're going to spend your time with, how you're going to have a conversation. That's if you're working with the general public. You might need someone to assist you with sales if you're going after corporations or companies as your ideal clients. And there are formulas for how do you speak from the stage to make an offer for people to work with you. So, if you're not selling, you're not serving. And every conversation is a sales conversation. So being comfortable, and because you're not only content, but your sales and your marketing and all of that, while you can hire a copywriter, you can hire an ad manager, you can even hire people to sell for you, but you're not really going to do that when you're first starting out.
Right.
So learning how to speak and make an offer is super important. So I enrolled in a program. It was a year-long program. I invested $10,000 for that education right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And that's something else that I also would love for listeners to get a hold of, is that you're going to have to invest in yourself to get the skills you need to be successful as a business owner, to be an entrepreneur. And you need a community, because no one does this alone. And a lot of these programs, accelerators, have masterminds in them where there are people exactly where you are, and you can help them. They help you, you help them, you critique each other's work, and it's a beautiful thing, and you're held accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if I read one more article that you can start your business for nothing, for $20. Come on, are you insane? Really? Stop it. Come on. Now think about this. it took you how many years to become knowledgeable enough to even start having this idea that you could do this for other people? And how much money did you already invest in your education, training, courses, books alone? I got $1 million in books. So to think that you're then going to start $1 million business and not make an investment, that's just devoid of logic to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are those unicorns that had $5,000 and, started her business and it just skyrocketed and took off. But
Right.
for most normal people, you
Right.
need to have at least 6 months of salary or a means of supporting yourself in the bank or someone who's supporting you while you do this launch.
Right.
And I would say, in my opinion, to get the technology infrastructure, the branding, the education and training that you need, probably invest around anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000
Yeah,
in
I'm
your
so glad to hear
launch.
you say that. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. And I even made a note. You said about spending money for the right skills. Right. Again, we waste thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on the accoutrements that say I'm in business, but they're not the things that are really going to get you clients. And two more things I want to talk about. One is the leads, right? The steady flow of leads that come in. That mechanism needs to be considered. And while you initially are thinking, I don't like to talk to strangers. Who does? I don't want to talk to strangers either. But you're right. I mean, okay, now I'm limited with who I'm allowing myself to speak to. This is what, to me, speaks to then find some way to make people not strangers as fast as you possibly can. It really comes down to relationships, because I don't know about you, nobody comes to my house and goes, hey, I hear there's a Smartie in there. So you're not really talking to strangers, right? You're talking to people who you've already developed some level of relationship with. Otherwise, you come across as a nut job. I mean, you're not talking to complete total strangers. You're talking
Right.
to people who've demonstrated some level of interest. But here's really where I was going with this. That person has baggage too. Right? You're uncomfortable in the conversation. They've been screwed. We've all been burnt by somebody.
Oh, so glad you said that. Yes.
So they're bringing their own emotional issues of, am I worthy of the opportunity this person is offering me?
And do I trust them?
And then do I trust them? And what proof do I have that they can do what they say they can do? This, to me, the late, great Peter Drucker said that marketing's job is to make selling superfluous. And that, to me, is really, that's why you're doing all this, is to help people come to you pre-sold, right? They're almost positive they're going to say yes to you.
Absolutely. And so, I like to label things and alliterate. And so I call it, connect, cultivate, and convert people into becoming, your ideal prospects into ideal clients. And it was interesting. I did drink the Tony Robbins Kool-Aid a few years ago and went to one of his sessions in a stadium with 14,000 people.
No.
But one of the nuggets I did take away with me was that it used to be that you only needed to connect with a prospect 4 times to convert them into a client. And now that's like 16.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so you have to have different ways to connect with your audience. And that's why, if you've heard of a lead funnel or a lead magnet, having something that's of value to them, that's worth the exchange. These are micro conversions, little micro conversions.
Right.
Someone gives you their email address. That's a micro conversion. Someone opens an email. That's a micro conversion. Someone attends your webinar. That's a micro conversion.
Right. Right.
Reads your blog or watches your Facebook Live. And that's why, making this leap, you have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone and do things that might feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that issue comes screaming at you when you realize I'm not willing to do that. I am grossly uncomfortable doing this. I know people who are some of the smartest folks I've ever met who truly I've seen command a meeting room, who then cannot get their message out because of the story. Again, back to that story.
The story in your head.
That they tell themselves that no one wants to hear me, nobody cares. I keep saying the same thing over and over again, nobody's paying attention. And there's just this, and I can totally respect this. I'm just going to give up.
Yes.
Go get a job. It's easier. And I think it's pick your poison, because you're still doing this. It's just, are you willing to come out of that comfort zone or not? And it's okay to say I'm not. It really is.
Yeah, it's totally okay. And having that clarity that entrepreneurship might not be for me.
Right.
And I just do better with structure and a regular paycheck, then go for it. There's no shame in having a job. And, they're fairly easy to get. So, the only other thing that I was going to add is, so if you do look for someone, if you do look for a business coach, make sure that ask them that question. What happens if I get stuck? What happens if I get in my own way? What happens if I get scared or feel uncomfortable? How do you handle that situation with me? Because sometimes I could have a coaching session on my calendar and I think we're going over market research results, and instead we're having a mindset conversation because there's something else going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And, hire people like you who help with the content, who help with the branding. You always want to go to an expert and someone who you trust. Yeah. And likely that person you trust has a network of people they trust. And so, keep it in the family. Try not to just go after the bright, shiny object. I mean, if you're on Facebook, you're on Insta, you're getting bombarded with offers every single day with very slick marketing.
Right.
And people who are asking you for thousands of dollars based on their ad or their webinar. And you get in there and you realize you never get to talk to a human being.
I am going to kiss you on the lips right now. So, and, this is just, I think everybody should be self-employed for a limited period of time because of the major awareness you develop about yourself. So this is it's ridiculous, but I'm going to confess it. So I have been teaching professionally since the mid-'80s. Yes, I'm a dinosaur. I used to teach typing on typewriters. What does that tell you? I taught for the first time in high school when a fellow band member wanted to learn the instrument that I played. And I sucked at teaching. It was only through age and wisdom that I learned to be kind and understand how people learn, and that not everybody was the same as me. So anyway, after you spend so many, I really believe that teaching is who I am, right? I used to introduce myself in the, why I bothered, I don't know, everybody knew me. In the corporations that I worked for, that I was technically a trainer or the training manager. I'm a learning facilitator. I ain't teaching you nothing. I'm sharing with you some concepts. You have to go apply them. That's the learning part. I completely missed this. So then, like exactly what you're saying, you get sucked in by these gurus. And it only seems like everybody's doing better than you because that's the way the algorithm works, right? To show you all this stuff. Really, everybody's doing the same boat you are. So you get sucked into these guru experiences. And exactly like you're saying, what learning can happen in 14,000 people? Okay, you had some some insight. That's fabulous. But real learning then happened when you came home and attempted to apply that. So when you buy into these programs, and I know people have spent tens of thousands of dollars, and as you say, never spoke to the guru, that's who they bought in for.
Right.
And then the experiences are not set up for real learning to happen.
Right,
so
right.
I think that's an important issue. How do you learn best? And is that what you're going to get? I'm going to bet it's not.
Right. So there's that, how is it that you learn best? And then there's also learning the right skills in the right order. So if you're just starting out, and we've been talking about, narrow casting and who's an ideal client and what's your niche, and you decide that you're going to go into this program about how to build a lead funnel, and which is really a lot of work. It's expensive. It'll take you hours and hours to do. There's technology behind it that you need to invest in. Right. And so I've had cases where I've been in those programs and I've seen some of my peers go through the whole process of writing dozens of emails that get automated in the system, recording videos and all of this, only to find out that no one wanted to buy what they were selling.
Oh my gosh, I know. Isn't that awful?
It is. It's awful. It breaks my heart. That's why I created, the Launch Lab, was to solve that problem.
Right.
Why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so, and what is more demoralizing than that? I once created, here's a true confession, I once created this, in my humble opinion, this great opt-in. I never got anybody to opt in for it. Never. Not one time. I would get people who I would speak and people would say, hey, put me on your email list. And they would end up getting it, but they didn't opt in for that. So yeah, you've invested. This is why I tell people, stop worrying about this. Figure your message out first. Let's get down to the problem that you solve and how you solve it. And does anybody want it?
Yes.
Then because then you'll know enough to figure out an opt-in. I agree with you so wholeheartedly. But again, it's the fun stuff, and it's the stuff that keeps us away from looking inside and recognizing that we've got a story, that for some of us, we've got emotional scars that get in our way.
Yeah. And it's that false progress, sharpening the pencils, thinking I'm doing something that's moving me in the right direction.
Yes. Yeah. There's a great cartoon. I wish I had it. Great cartoon from the Sunday comics of some little strip, and an animal is, okay, I'm going to write my book today. And the first frame, that's his first frame. Second frame, I need to sharpen 144 pencils. And he sharpens pencils. And then I need water. And by the last frame, somebody calls him and says, hey, do you want to go to lunch? And he blows up, I'm trying to write my book. That stuff that makes you feel like you're doing it and you're not doing it.
And that's resistance, and it's just fear. So let's just call it out for what it is.
Right.
And once you learn to call fear out for what it is,
right,
because it's sticky, it's slippery, you think you've conquered it, and then it shows up somewhere else in a different way. And it is the number one thing. And, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to suffer from this. It can happen if you're in the corporate world and you're not going for that promotion, or you're keeping yourself stuck or small, or feeding yourself a bunch of garbage in your head of what's true or what's not. I mean, when I do talks, I have this picture of a hoarder's house. And I said, that's your mind. Your mind is like a hoarder's house. There's so much crap up there that there's no room for insight or inspiration. And, when fear is driving your bus, you don't get into a very good place, because those thoughts are what's creating what you do, and what you do creates your results.
Yeah. And, I came to the conclusion, fear is just a memory.
Oh, that's interesting.
You're either remembering something bad that is similar to what you're about to do, and you're having that primal reaction of the memory coming up, or you're anticipating something to happen, but it's typically connected with some uncertainty or some injury, some emotional hurt, something from the past. So when you can recognize, all right, what am I actually afraid of? Being rejected. When have I been rejected before? About 75,000 times, and none of it killed me, and I didn't like those people anyway. And, so I'm just afraid that that's going to happen. And that comes down to, it's just a feeling.
It's just a feeling. And, the answer is connecting to the truth of the situation that you're really in,
Right.
and stop feeding yourself, these fearful stories that aren't even true.
Yeah.
And, that means that you're taking action based on stories that aren't even true. And so that's where, I used to have a boss from Australia who said, don't get your knickers in a twist. But that's what we do.
Yeah.
We get our knickers in a twist,
Right.
over something that isn't even happening, and never, ever get your head into what you think someone else is thinking, or anticipating what someone else will do, because you're putting yourself in a prison that's not even true. So, I like the stories from IA, keep your side of the street clean. Just keep to what's true for you in this moment.
Right.
And that's why being skilled and having good practices and, how to master this matter up here is 80% of your success.
It's the biggest, I was just going to say, it's the biggest part of the job.
Biggest part of the job. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And I do think, though, it's important to remember that, especially if you're selling to individuals, right? Often we're selling to other solo professionals in many cases, right? Those of us who have a service that we provide, coaching, consulting, in my case, messaging, etc. Remembering that person that's why I call it client-focused marketing, because you have to remember what that other person is experiencing. And in that remembering what that other person is experiencing, you can then craft a message that helps them say yes, helps them make a decision. I would rather have somebody self-select out of the process and disconnect from me entirely and never follow me again, than to work with somebody who is a completely wrong fit.
Yeah. It's torturous when that happens.
It's painful. I fired several clients early on because I didn't know enough about myself and who I wanted to work with.
Yeah.
And that's unpleasant.
Yeah, very. And, because every buying decision is an emotional decision, even if you're selling to corporations. I remember in my past job, I'd be doing the market research, testing a concept, and asking people, why is this important to you? What's important to you about this solution? Because it's not just about the company. They have a stake in the game.
That's right.
And you have to have that conversation to know what the emotional hook is.
Yeah.
For this person. Once you get clear on that, and it's not manipulation, you're not doing it to manipulate them, because people need to be brought to a buying decision. They need to see the path forward. They need to see the pain of no one buys anything unless there's pain. Unless they can see the pain of continuing to stay in the place that they are, then they frequently don't make a decision to change.
Yeah, now that's interesting. I had somebody tell me, no, my clients aren't motivated by that. They're not driven by pain. They don't have pain. I'm like, I got news for you. So I work with high achievers. I said the pain is they know they could be better. That's their pain. They are this constantly driven person, always wanting to get to the next level of whatever success or better is for them. That's why they work with somebody, so that they can get, the pain is they know they can't get there by themselves. They know they want to get to that next level of performance, no matter what that next level is. You go to the gym, when you see people working with a trainer, you see the people who are new, God bless them, that they have enough sense to hire somebody at the beginning and work with a trainer, right? Then you see people who look like they should be the trainer, who are, you're thinking, what in the heck do you need a trainer for? And it's because they know the value of being pushed. They know the value of the expertise that trainer brings, new combinations, new whatevers. This person is studying all the time and I don't have to. So this is why there is such a power in working with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I could go on for hours, obviously, days even. So, but people will be happy to hear. We won't. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you do, who you work with, and where can folks go to learn more? Deb, you mentioned the Launch Lab.
Sure. So I work with women. Typically they are high achievers, smart, successful, accomplished, who for whatever reason have decided it's time to make the leap and do something I'm passionate about, or make an impact on the world, or have unlimited income potential, more freedom, and but they don't know how, and they're more than a little bit scared in what might happen on the other end, and they're looking for help. Yeah. So what I did was I took like you said, we weren't born yesterday. This isn't something that I discovered overnight, or I took a course and now I'm reselling you the same content. This is something that I've done for about 25 years, and applying that same process of understanding what problem you solve, what people you serve, how to package and price your services, how to create money-making model, what are the basic messages. I don't do copywriting. I introduce you to other people who can do that, but you have the basic mindset of who your ideal client is. And then we packaged that all up. So I started the Launch Lab for Women Entrepreneurs, and I realized it's a 12-week virtual accelerator for women who are making the leap or who have already leapt, and they're struggling with getting traction. And it could be a launch, it could be a relaunch. And there's some course material in there because I realized I was training the same thing over and over again with every individual. And I said, it's easier for you to watch the 15-minute video, download the handout, and then when we're working one-on-one, then we can actually work on your business. And that's where the acceleration happens, is, an hour together brings them from here to there. And so it's very gratifying, very fulfilling. And so it's, the Launch Lab for Women Entrepreneurs. It's,
That's so great. So where can folks go? Is it thelaunchlab.com? What's the best URL to send people to?
Best URL is launchlabaccelerator.com.
Okay, great. Great. And of course, we'll have that in the show notes, along with all the other ways that you can connect with Deb. She's everywhere fine people want to be online, so you can get connected to her on social media as well. Deb, such a pleasure talking with you. This has been great information, and I'm so happy we were able to connect.
It was great, Winnie. It was like a Vulcan mind melt. Great to spend this time with you.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. Deb was great to chat with. It was like a big love fest. If you like this episode, please share it with your connections. Please leave a great review on the platform where you consumed it. You can become a fan of the show and access back episodes and resources by going to couragepodcastfan.com and signing up for the vault. It's free, of course. In addition to the episodes, you'll get information, tips, and resources to help you sell your services even though you hate to sell, get your message out in a more powerful way, and achieve your business goals. All right, so your cocktail exercise, otherwise known as a reflection exercise, no alcohol needs to be involved. Don't overindulge. Don't drink and drive. All right, your reflection exercise is really to think about how you spend your time. Are you working on things like getting clarity on your message, identifying the problem you solve, and understanding the aspirations and blocks of your ideal clients? Or are you focusing on the busy work that makes you feel good but doesn't move you forward? That's the stuff that Deb refers to as sharpening the pencils. No matter where you are in business, it's easy to get caught up in things that really don't move you towards that next big leap that you keep dreaming of making. And your action step. All right, I'm going to give you two. One for those of you who are still thinking about launching, and then those of you who are in business but not where you want to be, although you might be able to benefit from both of these. So for those of you who haven't launched, I want you to identify the change that you want to bring about in the world through your work, and then identify the work that you're going to do to actually bring about that change. Yes, I know it's coaching or consulting or training, but get specific about exactly how you're going to bring about that impact that you want to make. Can you phrase what you plan to do in terms of when someone works with you, they'll go from X to Y, right? What are the phrases that describe that X, where they are, and the Y, where they want to be? Because if you can just quickly say, I help whoever it is you help go from X to Y, that's going to help people see the transformation that you're able to help them get. So you really have to work on not just the transformation that you help them create, but also that message that's going to help them understand it. And if you're already launched, but you aren't as successful as you wanted to be by now, ask people how they would describe what you do to other people. This is a great thing to just send messages to people on Facebook or email people. First of all, if they don't get back to you, maybe they can't describe it. And if they do tell you what they would say, but they don't describe it in a way that's how you would describe it, maybe it's off base from what you want them to say, now you know you got a problem, and it's either with your positioning, you're not clearly owning one spot in their mind, or you have a problem with your messaging, they're not getting what it is you're trying to say, or it might be both. If you like this episode, please be sure to share it. And if you're on Facebook, be sure to find me and like my business page so you get notified when I go live, because each week I share the after show where I take one concept or idea that was discussed in this week's episode and I do a deeper dive into that area. And remember, you can become a fan of the show and get access to the vault, the back catalog of episodes in both audio and video format. And you'll also get bonus materials like worksheets for some of the episodes. You can find that at couragepodcastfan.com. And as I said, in addition to the episodes, you're going to get information, tips, and resources to help you come out of hiding, get your message out in a more powerful way, and achieve your business goals so you can profit from your expertise. Thanks for listening, and remember, you deserve all the success you dream of.